Is it not?
Now it's recording. Should we start
Oh,
that again? Oh, so
yeah.
right, okay, right. We'd started it, and then I noticed that it wasn't recording. So bloopers. Right. So what we're going to talk about tonight, Dan, is really into the esoteric and the aliens and the occult stuff, which is what I've been progressively getting into. We met in an errands chat group, and we've been chatting privately, and I'm learning so much from Dan. And I was reading, and Dan was the guy who Dan introduced me to Tom Montauk. I'm sorry, this is really hashed because we've already had this. We've already talked about this. It just wasn't recorded. Introduced me to Tom Montauk, and I was reading one of Tom's books last night called Fringe Knowledge, and it got to the bit. It was a section on the aliens, and it was talking about the different aliens. And you got mantids, Nordics, reptilians, and what's the other one?
There's jesters.
He didn't mention
Um,
jesters.
or the aliens.
Yeah,
Yeah, so you got the Greys.
the Greys, that's it. So the Greys, the
Yeah.
mantids. So the Greys are the aliens that are depicted, that we see when they are depicted with the big heads, the big eyes, and the triangular faces. The mantids are like praying mantises. The reptilians are, as you can imagine, the reptilians, and the Nordics are the most human-looking ones, aren't they? They look like Nordic.
Humanoids.
Yeah, they look like Nordic people. And I messaged Dan and I said, I'm just reading about the Nordics. Is this what Hitler wanted when he was trying to create this perfect race of blonde and blue-eyed beings? And then it got him onto what we're going to talk about tonight, which is around Admiral Byrd, Antarctica, Hitler and the Nazis, and the esoteric artifacts. So go shoot, Dan. So but first off, let's go back to how you got into all of this and a little bit of your background, just to introduce you to my small audience.
So obviously, I've done 14 years in the military as 473 Special OPs. So my job was obviously Brigade Recce Force targeting and acquisition. So I spent a lot of time out on the ground, seeing things that people don't hear about in the news, like ancient temples, old buildings, which obviously all got destroyed by the Americans and the British military, to obviously create the new reset, which we're going through now for the Phoenix event. As for the Nordics, obviously I've gone through the spiritual side as well, where I've had astral planing and esoteric things happen to me, and obviously my partner as well. And I've also witnessed these Nordic aliens through obviously the esoteric realm from astral planing. Going into about the Nordic aliens themselves, where they actually come from, if people are not aware, they come from the star called Aldebaran, which is from the Pleiades solar system, which is obviously light years and light years away. What people think they come here physically, they don't. They come as hyperdimensional through consciousness, through dream state and channeling. So one of the ways they were connecting with the Nazis was through channeling, through clairvoyance. And this is where the Nazis were getting their information to create this ancient technology or alien technology, which they were using, like UFOs, submarines, weapon systems, which was frequency weapon systems, sound wave weapon systems, which we'll go a bit further into that later on. So who do we know them as today? We know them as the Aryan race, and this is where people get mixed up with thinking that Hitler wanted to change everyone into the Aryan race. It's a bit like the Avengers movie, Captain America with Red Skull. So what they wanted to do, the Nazis, they wanted to create a superhuman race, which is more stronger, more powerful, more intelligent, using the technology and obviously DNA that comes from the Nordic aliens. The special abilities that the Nordics have is obviously the tall, so you're 6 foot plus, 7 foot, 8 foot people. They have superhuman strength. They have telepathic powers, highly intelligent, and they can also read minds as well. What the Nazis were using was a woman called Maria Orsic, who was a clairvoyant, who was channeling the information from the Nordics to obviously the Third Reich. which were then given the prototype to the technologies, aircrafts, and so forth from 1942 to 1944, which is all metaphysical research and alien tech. What they were also trying to do at the same time was collect relics, which, if people watch any Tom stuff, there's demiurge technology, alien artifacts that are actually scattered around the planet.
And they're called UPARTs, aren't they? UPARTs,
yeah,
out of place.
parts.
Yeah.
So obviously the Nazis had already acquired some of these pre-World War II. Obviously they wanted to find the rest of them. The ones that they already had in place was the Spear of Destiny, the Tesseract, and the Skull and Bones, which is what you see at Yale University, which George Bush and all the presidents all worship, which was actually found in Crimea 2 years before World War II started. So obviously people believe this was actually alien bones, which they actually worship. And this is, I think, where so this is where they think they were getting the DNA to do the cloning for these new superhuman races.
Because the Skull and Bones is a faction of the Freemasonry, isn't it?
Yeah. So what people don't realize is that fraternity are actually worshipping an alien artifact or a dead alien species. Which, if you can look into it itself, it's both male and female. The actual bones, it shows both bone structures of both male and female.
Femur, isn't it? The femurs are male and female.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So that's what they already had. What they were looking, the other things they were looking for was obviously the Holy Grail, which some people believe is what can procreate new creatures, which is what they wanted to do, and also recreate the Nephilim, the fallen. That's one of the other things that they were looking for. How the Nazi Party started, before all this started, between two occult societies called the Vril and the Tully Society. They gave birth to the Nazi Party in the Victorian ages, in the 1800s time. Obviously, these were a German cult, and they were also known as mystics. So what their ambition was to create a new world order for the Third Reich. Obviously, that didn't happen. So obviously, we're now in the Fourth Reich, which is still going on today. People think the Reich's gone, but it's not. So if you look at the WEF, Klaus Schwab, he actually wears the Fourth Reich robes. So he's still in the Vril Society. The Vril people, I don't know if people are aware of them, they're the women with the long hairs that used to have the hair all the way down to the legs, and they were very mystic and clairvoyant. So they believe that the hair was antennas, so they can gain more knowledge by extending their consciousness further afield. That's what this society was with the Vril. So with Maria Orsic, obviously she was blonde hair, blue eye, she had the clairvoyant, she was getting the information from the Nordics. People also believe that she was one of Odin's original daughters.
So can I interrupt you very quickly there? So the Nordics, are they benevolent or malevolent?
I think they're more neutral.
Okay.
But like they will give things, because it's everything's down to free will. They will pass on the technology. What we do with that technology is up to us.
Right.
So because they're channeling through to another dimension, they're not allowed to say, no, we can't give you the push. They can give you the technology, but it's up to us what we do with it. If we destruct it, they're not allowed to interfere with that side of things. So it's hard to say if they're benevolent or malevolent, because the way they look at it is they're both sided. They don't believe in good and evil. They're just there to try and progress mankind or humanity with technology.
And it's been so that's right. Okay, so that's what again, correct me if I'm wrong. So that's where the Gnostics bring in with the demiurge, and the demiurge is artificial intelligence that is some call Satan as an example.
Yeah.
So Satan has, or the demiurge has, infiltrated this realm and
Yeah.
inverted everything. So where the Nordics may have been, although they're neutral, because you just said to benefit humanity, the demiurgic etheric force has inverted what the Nordics have given humanity. And am I right in what I'm waffling on about there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
because obviously we work in a world of duality, so everyone's got that dark, but obviously the light in them. How we use it is down to us. It's how we feed the beast. Obviously, it's fell into the wrong hands at the time, and obviously, are we moving into a new time where the new age is going to be working in our favor, kind of thing?
sure.
But so yeah, it's a hard one because some people believe as well the Nordics are what created the Cro-Magnon. So when we've gone from the Nefandrial stage,
Re-jog my memory what Cro-Magnon is.
so the Cro-Magnon was going from the Nefandrial stage of evolution to the next evolution where we started to have chins, jaw lines, farming animals, agriculture. So they were a different type of genetic breed from the Nefandrials. They were into hunting, barbaric, just more primitive than the Cro-Magnon. Cro-Magnon was more about family, agriculture. So people believe that's what who created the Cro-Magnon. So originally they come from like the Persian area, around Syria, all that kind of area, and then obviously going up to then towards India was the Cro-Magnon.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first time I think people actually seen this power of the technology that the Nazis were using before they went actually into Antarctica was actually the Battle of LA, which was in 1942, the 24th and 25th. This is when they actually showed the first time that they had this alien technology. I don't know if you're aware what happened at Battle of LA.
No.
There was 2 UFOs, and they fired the more ammunition than I think any time recorded in history. I think 1,500 rounds at this one aircraft, and obviously the aircraft wiped out everything. And that was the first time that the Americans went, wow, what is this kind of technology? These aircrafts are moving too quick. They thought it was alien technology. Obviously, it was the Nazis, which they obviously found out afterwards when they found the paperwork, obviously, in the bunkers of all these diagrams of UFOs, aircraft, anti-gravity aircraft, tanks that could not get penetrated by bullets, etc.
It was the Germans, it was the Nazis who were being fed this information from the Nordics, and the Americans knew nothing about it.
Nothing about it at first.
Wow.
So they didn't find out, the Americans. I think it was till 1944, and that was by mistake. So the 2 submarines got lost. 2 Nazi submarines got lost on the coast of Argentina, in a place called, I think, what was it called now? Oh, Queensmorland. So they were meant to go into Queensmorland, and then they ended up in Argentina and on a port. These 2 submarines, and what they found was they were carrying relic artifacts that they've gathered, and it was on an expedition called Valkyrie 2, which was in 1945. So this was 18 months before Operation High Jump. These 2 submarines that they actually found were actually so advanced, it blew obviously the Americans' minds. In the ships are called the U-530s, and these could travel at such a speed and carry aircraft. These submarines, they were carrying aircraft, other boats. The people on the ship had all the faces covered for some reason I'm not too sure about. But obviously, this is where they discovered the relics. I think the main relic that they found on the actual ship was obviously the Spear of Destiny.
Okay.
But obviously, nothing. It's all classified. There's not much you can find into any of that. Which then goes into obviously going into Antarctica. So, what the Germans were doing with Antarctica, they found a place called New Swabia. which was a German base, which was discovered in 1939, which is where they kept all these demiurge technology, such as the tesseracts and the skull and bones, etc. What they found, obviously, in Antarctica was obviously other stuff as well. Obviously, you had your ancient pyramids, the Hollow Earth. But
hang on a minute. Hang on.
I don't know.
Pyramids in Antarctica.
Oh yeah, I think there's 200 now discovered in Antarctica pyramids.
Wow. See, because just to give because I watched that video you sent me last night. Well, I got halfway through it, and Antarctica isn't as it's been depicted to us. It's not just full of ice, is it? You've got your Greenlands, you've got these hot water lakes, which are just absolutely. It's like a tropic. You've got tropical lands, haven't you?
Yeah, this is what Admiral Byrd started to tell people. Obviously, this is what he discovered when he were making. So he did 3 expeditions before, obviously, Operation High Jump. So he's got all this all recorded, all these pyramids, all these ancient sites, and have just been left there. And obviously, there was signs of civilization being there long before they actually got there.
So the pyramids in Antarctica, they're nothing to do with the Pyramid of Giza, because of course the Pyramid of Giza is a supernatural force in and of itself, which I'd like to have a conversation
about. Pyramid on its own. Yeah. Pyramid of Giza is a complete separate pyramid. It's just a pyramid its own. Yeah. So obviously that's the kind of things that Admiral Byrd was discovering. Obviously we're going to Operation High Jump, and obviously what the Secretary of Defence, what's his name now? Secretary of Defence James Forrestal, and what he said before he obviously committed suicide by jumping out a window, so they say. Yeah. Yeah. So obviously going into the Antarctica thing, so obviously General Byrd, which was a bit strange, he was doing an expedition where he had over, I think it was between 20 to 23 aircraft, 13 ships and submarines, with a fleet of 5,000 soldiers on it, which is quite.
Give a bit of background. Sorry to interrupt. What was General Byrd going? Oh, sorry, Admiral Byrd. Are we talking about Admiral Byrd? Sorry. Yeah. Admiral Byrd. What was he going to Antarctica for? He was American, wasn't he?
Yeah, so he was American. Yeah. It was told it was an expedition, so he was just going there to discover stuff. He's done it many times, and this was quite strange that he was taking such a force to do an expedition. Like, why does he need 5,000 fighting soldiers, 13 warships, and there were some of the best warships, and obviously 23 aircraft, which is quite, wow, that's a big force. That's for because this was after World War II finished. It was 18 months after.
Okay. Right. Okay. I thought World War II and the Antarctica expedition were simultaneous, but
no, it was after. Yeah. So because what they realized is when after the war, there were all these scientists. There was 200 submarines missing, were unaccounted for. Obviously, all the scientists, which we now know, became NASA and NOAA and all etc. So all these high scientists were creating all these aircraft, which when they destroyed the bunkers, they all shifted to obviously to Antarctica, to these secret bases, which was called Swabia.
Okay.
Yeah. So obviously, when Admiral Byrd left to the thing, it was designed to be a 6-month expedition. That's what it was designed to be beginning. So when he actually turned up there, they got attacked and by ships and technology that they've never ever seen before. So the actual 6 months expedition only lasted 2 months, and obviously they came back with their tails between their legs and fled, because whatever the Nazis had, they were destroying that amount of that power of what America were trying to use.
So why didn't the Nazis use this technology in the war? Did they not have it in the war? At that time?
It was a prototype. They were doing prototypes, so they weren't fully functional at the time during the war. It was all prototypes, which which they were using. Like they say, the first time they actually got to use that technology was obviously the Battle of LA, which was in 1942. So the war was coming to an end towards then. It was obviously ended in 1945.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. Right. Carry on. Sorry. Just I'll jump in with questions as and when they come to me, just so I've got a clear understanding of this, because this is fascinating.
Yeah.
Go.
It's a big subject, especially when you get into the Nordic stuff, obviously, the Antarctic stuff. So obviously the Operation High Jump was in 1947. So what they were going to was called Queen's Maudland, which used to be part of, it was owned by Norway at the time, and obviously the Germans took it over. I'll go into it. It's my finger. Sorry. Give it a second. Yeah, so there was obviously everything is classified. There's loads of rumors of what Antarctica, but what people found out later on was by the first Secretary of Defense of America, which was James. He went to a psychiatric ward, a naval psychiatric ward, about 2 years after Operation High Jump. And obviously, he started spilling all the truths, saying that there was a big lake in the middle of Antarctica. It was like a paradise, like the Amazon, and there were these people that he's never met before, and they were so friendly, and they had technology way more advanced than obviously we had in the 1940s. And then he started talking about Operation High Jump, and what happened there. And obviously, like I say, he got pinged for saying all this. They said after, it went that long because he weren't allowed no visitors, and obviously straight after that, he obviously did the old suicide, jumped out of a window and killed himself. So everything that we know about the Antarctica with the lakes and everything like that has all come from the Secretary of Defense. Obviously, at the time, people would have said he was a person who would never lie. He had so many accommodations, and he's done so much before. And obviously, he was the one who was blowing the trumpet on everything about the Third Reich or what they were actually doing, and how the Americans actually took these scientists afterwards to obviously create NASA, NOAA, and stuff like that. Where am I? So yeah.
So isn't NASA a legit organization? As in, if NASA know about this alien technology, then they've got the technology to be able to see planets, if indeed planets do exist. I get so conflicting with, because of course we get told that the space doesn't exist, but then so, as you just said, like the Nordics are from a Palladian galaxy, like thousands of however many thousands, 100,000 miles away from us, and I'm just trying to process it all in my own head and put it into a neat little box for myself.
So they also realize that this planet, or simulation as you want to call it, is a prison planet. The Nordics know that, hence why they can't come in, but they can communicate through consciousness.
Right. All right.
And
interesting.
why they do everything by telepathy. So when they are here, they come here through like a spirit kind of thing, so they can travel, move their essence through the speed of light. Because I think it's something like 32,000 light years away is where the Pleiades is. So obviously, for them to get here, by the time they get here, the world would have aged big time. So they have to do it by hyperdimensional through the consciousness. So they can't be physically here.
Yeah.
Through thought and through dreams, they can communicate and pass on this knowledge, because obviously they know as well. Oh, hang on, we're running out.
Okay, we'll come back because I can link them together. It's fine. We've got 10 minutes left here. We can do it in 2 parts if you're happy to come back and talk, because you're not even touched the surface, have you? Yeah, I can link them together on my editing suite, so it's fine.
All right.
So if we just before we go into the meat and potatoes of it, so is that the same? Because I know there's some aliens that live underground in the underground bases. Yeah. Do they communicate through consciousness as well?
Yes and no, because there is species here. We're not the only species that got trapped in the prison.
Right.
So what happened, it goes back to your ages. There was a massive change between the Leo age, and going from the Leo age, we jumped 2 ages, which is when the demiurge actually came in.
I find it so exciting. It's amazing. Go on.
So we went from the demiurge, not the demiurge, went from the age of Leo, which is what the Egyptians worshipped, the lion, which is obviously the Sphinx. It was actually the lion pointed to the Lion's Gate. And then we jumped from the age of Leo to the age of Taurus, which is the bull. And
just going back to, is that why the Egyptians worship the cats? And they're
correct.
Right.
The Mayans, again, they worship the jaguar. So it was all to do with the obviously the cat, the feline.
Yeah.
So
and
obviously
then the age of the bull.
Yeah. So we missed Gemini and Cancer for some reason, and that's where I believe the demiurge. That's when that program came in. So that was your first polar shift. It jumped 2 ages, and then jumped us from the age of Leo to the age of Taurus, is when they started worshipping the bull. So obviously this is where you start seeing civilizations started worshipping the bull. We then went from Taurus then to Aries, which is the ram.
And that's where you've got all the Baphomet and...
Yeah. And then we went from obviously Aries then to Pisces, the fish, which is obviously where we are.
We are now, yeah.
Going into the age of Aquarius. So the age of Aquarius is meant to be the next pole shift. So it's also a complete, the full ages. We're coming to the end of the cycle.
Yeah, which takes 26,000 years, doesn't it, to come to
26,000 years. Yeah.
And in each cycle is around 2,500 years. But if we've missed 2 cycles, then we haven't completed a full cycle, have we? Because we've missed 2.
No, we've missed 2, yeah.
And that's where
the shift happened, and that's where the pole shift happened, and that's where everything changed.
So if we're heading for the pole shift, could we potentially miss the age of Aquarius?
We're already in the age of Aquarius coming into it.
Right.
Yeah, the final, I think it's November. It is November when all planets are fully in, because planets move in and out of the age of Aquarius at the minute, and I think the full alignment is around November time, 2023.
So when was the Pyramid of Giza? Because the Pyramid of Giza is, and I know I'm going off on a bit of a different subject, and we can have another chat about the Pyramid of Giza and it's when I've done a little bit more research, but that is the coding of this realm, isn't it? The Pyramid of Giza is what is where this is.
The pyramids, if we're going back into the history, then it looks like that was the age of the Leo.
Of course, yeah, the Egyptians, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Right, okay.
Yeah.
And the Pyramid of Giza was built in the center of the plane, so when we do a pole shift, that doesn't move, does it?
No, it doesn't affect it. That's why the pyramid's so important as well, because obviously that's the only... People believe it's a power station. I know it's going off a bit of a tangent, but if it's a power station, why does it give off the same frequency as the Earth's heartbeat, which is 7.2 hertz? Why does it give you the dimensions of the planet?
So, and I know but we've only got like 5 minutes left, so we may as well talk about the Pyramid of Giza in these 5 minutes, then go back onto Antarctica. So of course, Enki, or whatever you want to call him, he was the one that was supposed to have built the Pyramid of Giza.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. Was he an Anunnaki or an Anuna?
Anunnaki, yeah. Enki and El.
Right. Okay.
So
And they,
Enki, yeah, so Enki was always the dark side, your Satan, and Elohim is obviously your light, which is Lucifer. It's always your duality.
and they were brothers, were
Brothers,
they?
yeah.
They were brothers, and they built the Pyramid of Giza. This is we can't go into too much depth with about this, can we? Because again, it's just a huge subject, and I've got huge holes missing, and you're going to fill in those holes.
Yeah.
So I just want to quickly say, like the what I understand about Antarctica, and you're going into more depth of this. Antarctica and World War II, 1945 was the beginning of the social engineering for this Great Reset, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yes. So
Yeah.
not long after that, obviously, I think 1947 is when they did the Antarctic Treaty. No, it was 1960s. The Antarctic Treaty was done,
Oh,
wasn't
I thought it was 1947.
it? 1961.
Oh, okay. And that's when the Beatles were introduced, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah, yeah. 23rd
Around
of
that time.
June 1961 was when they signed the Antarctic Treaty and banned all military activity.
Okay, we'll stop there and we'll come back in and then we'll carry on with that because I'm finding this fascinating. Thank you, Dan. See you in a few minutes.